sentinels at the portal of eternity, mighty ones who stand before the king, valiant ones whom none shall pass, guardians of the king's tomb.
Is that a quote for Tomb Kings?
That is.
Tomb
Did you
Kings.
get that by the word tomb and king at the end of the sentence?
The Tomb Kings didn't win the event that we're talking about here. In fact, spoilers! I've got the fancy graphic on the screen, and when I say fancy, I mean like not that fancy. Took me 10 minutes to put together. How is everyone doing on this fine Tuesday? Ed's here. Good to have you. He's excited for graphs and charts because you're a nerd. Me too. Richard's here as well. Do you love a good data visualization? Hell yeah. Anthony. I feel like I missed a message in the middle there. And yeah, how is everyone doing? Hope you're all doing well. The weather is quite nice here in the UK, and by that I mean overcast and cool.
It's settled out nicely.
Yeah, Steve says we've been starved of old world content and games of Guess Who. Yes, that's true, that's true. Apologies. I've had a lot going on in the last week, and I think I'll put a video out on Sunday talking about it. But yeah, there'll be a video coming on Thursday. I think I've got a fun battle report for you with some 1.5 match play mission rules, all of that good stuff. Playing a Tracian Warhost detachment list. Played that game earlier today. It was a lot of fun. Really enjoyed it. Callum says, have not recovered from the great event this weekend that you couldn't make. Yeah. No, absolutely. It looked like everyone was having a great time there. So the main thing we're going to be talking about is why and how tournaments might be set up in terms of what secondary scoring or what primary scoring you go for. And I don't mean necessarily do you have objectives on the board. That's a different conversation that I'm sure we'll go through at some point when we've had more time to see events with and without scoring like that. But this is what's better. Do you want your primary scoring to be victory points? Do you want it to be strength of schedule? Win, loss, draw. There's a lot of different things that you could do in terms of the way that you set up your event. And it promotes different things. And that's something that I think is worth talking about, because the stats that we're looking at here tell you from this weekend, from the event, the Saffron Slam that went on, and I'll get Lewis to give us a quick update. Unfortunately, I couldn't be there. But it rewards certain different things, and we can go into that in depth as we go through. But before we do, if you're here and you haven't already, do give the stream a thumbs up. It does help get picked up by the algorithm. YouTube mumbo jumbo, you know it, you love it. If you haven't already and you're interested in going to an event at the TSN Arena, not sponsoring this video, but they are friend of the channel, do go to tsnarena.com and you can get your events ticket there. Also, Saffron Slam event tickets can be found at elmominiatures.com, I believe is still the website. You
Correct.
really need some better SEO there, but we'll talk about that one as well.
I need to change the business. Used to be a commission painting business that I've never quite updated to the tournament running businss on the interwebs. But it does work if you just Google Saffron Slam. It does come up. So
yes,
it's still
obviously,
kind of there.
If you're a channel member, if you are a paid member on the channel, do not buy your tickets through there. You do get a discount. Message Lewis directly on Discord. Speaking of, there's a Discord. If you're not part of it, you should be. There is almost 1,000 people on that Discord.
That is mad.
Yeah, I got a message earlier today that I need to respond to. I haven't had a chance. Someone just saying I used to run a Discord, and congratulations on running a really nice place to have discussions. And I was like, oh, I deserve none of that credit. And it's like, it takes so little work. I think the only moderation I did was like 4 days ago, and before that I hadn't really had to do anything for months. And it was very mild, and just as a gentle reminder to make sure that the space is welcoming to all and not to do things that may unintentionally scare away people who are less likely to get into the hobby. But yeah, what else?
I think really the only two people that come in for abuse in that Discord is you and I.
Yeah, we deserve it though. Yeah. Yes.
I've seen the Discord questions for those VIPs who have paid membership and therefore get the pleasure of asking us questions. And yeah.
Should I have looked? Is it bad?
It'll be fine. I just need to get some disclaimers out in advance.
You just need to mentally prepare yourself.
Yeah, I'm not actually that into feet, and I'm not entirely sure.
Oh yeah, that you've not learned. So there was in one of the sections, the chat sections. I can't remember which one it was. Was it like Cathay or something? I can't remember which section it was.
Something like that,
you posted something that said, "I like feet," but then with other words after it, and I don't think that was even the context. And of course, immediately someone clipped that, and then also put it over a picture from your wedding. So if we're going down the lines of who is deserving and receiving of abuse, you're definitely getting it. I will admit it was hilarious. So there is that. But yeah, so a full disclaimer in case you watch this bit and then you skip to the end of the video. Lewis doesn't love feet, or is claiming to not love them publicly.
I claim.
We're going to allow people to enjoy what they're like in private. So even though he does definitely love feet, you heard it here first. We're going to publicly pretend he doesn't, for his own sanity. Fantastic.
I don't want to get cancelled. I'm just starting to enjoy this, Ed.
You can't be cancelled for liking feet. Just don't message our Discord members and be like, show me your feet. That would be weird. I cut off the bit a little bit earlier than I was intending to. I realised, as I said it, I was like, I could potentially... anyway, let's move on. So, last little bit of admin. I am going to be potentially rolling out more changes to the coaching. If you are already a coaching member, don't worry about it. Things will not be changing for you in the short term unless you want them to change. I will be looking at doing some other stuff over the next few months. But with that in mind, I'm going to be removing the cap on how many Discord members I can have. If you want, not Discord members, sorry, how many coaching members I can have. If you are interested in coaching, do go to patreon.com/close order. Feel free to ask questions on Discord. You can, there's a coaching section in there, or you can shoot me a message if you have questions about specific things, if you want to go over stuff. The 3 hours is usually for coaching games. The last 2 3-hour sessions I've done, both of them have actually not been coaching games. I did 3 hours of list tech, which I was surprised we managed to talk about one army for 3 hours, but we did get through that. Shout out Amy, who is a huge lover of the Ragnarok Spider. So there was a lot to go through when we're like, how do we make this list work while also putting in this many-eyed, many-legged beast? The other
her work. Just, again, for the Discord, go and have a look at the Orcs and Goblins and the hobby part of the Discord. Yes. Her painting and her modelling is off the scale good.
Yes.
Absolutely stunning. Yeah.
Yeah, she's a very talented artist, which is, I think, the only reason that I would concede and be like, okay, yes, I will write lists with you that have the spider in, because I understand it's for a painting goal, because it's really, really beautifully painted. The other one was a lovely chap who I am working with from one of the international teams. I won't say which one, but he wanted to talk about some... Wait, hold on, I'm mixing things up. Never mind. We did some list review and some tournament review games, but I'm combining two things in my head. Anyway,
to be fair as well, thinking about Saffron Slam, 2 of your coaching clients were present at Saffron Slam.
Actually. 3. I had a last minute, so I was coming back from my brother's wedding, which I will talk about on Sunday. Lovely wedding, really, really nice. Really glad I was there, and I got stuck on the train, and I knew I wasn't going to have time to get back in time to prep for a Friday night stream where we did, fix my list. But someone had messaged me the day before saying, hey, I'm going to Saffron Slam. It looks like a bit more of a Shark Tank. Could we do some work and go through how I should play my list? And also, potentially how to approach the other list there and the missions. So had a last minute call there as well. So 3 of my coaching students went, which was...
Yes. And we had, just fantastic. In terms of the scale, the difference between individuals. So we did have one individual, one of your clients, he managed to get a podium at the event, which is amazing. So there's testament there.
I won't take too much credit for that. Ed is very good already.
He's a very good player already.
But he did send me a message that earlier, which he said, he said he felt like the work we'd done together had helped.
Had helped, definitely. But we had an individual win their first 2 games at an event as a result.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
Nick, they lost all their games.
Yeah, Nick went 0-2 previously and was actually the first coaching student. Messaged me, said, hey, are you interested in doing it? And then he's come and performed infinitely better, got 2 wins, a draw, and 2 losses, which is huge result. Really, really good. Yeah. Especially with how much of a Shark Tank. And also, the poor guy, he had to play against, I think, 3 Tomb Kings and 1 Bretonian player. Come on, that's so rough. And he won 2 of them. He beat Tomb Kings twice, I think it was.
Yeah, no, he did really well. Yeah, really well.
Really, really impressive. Also played against some of the people that I've played against, so I know they weren't walkover games. But yeah, so coaching is open. I'm removing the number cap on how many students I can have for now. If it gets a bit too manic, I may have to close it for a bit. But right now, I am accepting more applications. All right, good stuff. Let's talk about the event first of all. Do you want to give us a quick summary, go over how things went, all of that good stuff?
Yeah, so this was the Saffron Slam 5. This was the 3rd GT-sized event. Did 2 little one-days beforehand, but we've gone up to 2 days now. Although
the first one I haven't won.
Yeah, first one you haven't won.
I wasn't there.
That you've attended. Your 100% win rate remains...
No, that's not true. I lost... So I went to your RTT, and I brought a list that was... Oh, God, remember when the big bad in the meta was the royal host, potentially, and I was like, oh god, I'm gonna have to work out how to deal with 180 Tomb King skeletons in one unit. And I took an interesting tech list, knowing I wouldn't face that, but I wanted to see how it performed into the general field.
The rest of the meta,
and I'm so sorry to the 2 dwarf players I played, because it turns out teching to deal with undead means that you kill dwarves at an unfair rate. And both of them I 20-0'd, but like to such a brutal degree. I'm like, I'm really sorry. I feel like I've committed a war crime. And it was mostly just like, here's the list that is designed to kill tanky bricks. Oh, you're playing dwarves? You both have tanky bricks? Sorry, bud. About that. Anyway.
I'm sure they still had a good time.
I also got bodied by Tomb Kings.
Yeah. So yeah, no, our 3rd GT now. I think getting there now with the organisation of it all, the running of it. Obviously, it was the first one on 1.5 in terms of the new army building restrictions and the new missions, which is really, really good. I went relatively light on secondaries. Each mission had one of them in, plus a Saffron Slam specific one. Because again, I'm not trying to create an event that's at the top of the competitive scene. That's really not what I'm trying to achieve. Although we did have quite a few strong lists this time around. So what I look at normally at the start of an event, I just kind of, and in the emails and things in advance of the event, I'll reiterate what Saffron Slam's trying to achieve. We had players that this was their first ever event that they'd been to, either locals or people that had travelled from farther afield, and from people whose the first event they ever went to was the previous Saffron Slam. So this was their 2nd ever tournament. So still very, very new to the hobby and to the game. Yeah. And they're people that you want those kind of newer people to feel welcome in the community. They want to feel part of it. And as part of that is having good games, even though they'll probably lose a lot of their games. And that's something we try and make clear. Like, if you are new, you're probably going to lose a lot, but actually, as long as you have a good time doing it and you feel like you're learning, that's really good. Which is why then, obviously, at the start, there was a couple of Cathay lists, a couple of strong undead lists. Just sort of said at the start to everybody, said, those of you with strong lists, you're probably going to do quite well. Accept that, and then try and use your games to help newer players or players with less experience. Try and help them through their games and try and make sure that they have as much of a good time as you're going to have, because that's what I care about more than anything else. So I try and do it. We'll talk about the placing system in a minute. So I try and encourage that attitude through the placing system and through the prizes and stuff like that. The prize for winning is tiny compared to what you get for sportsmanship and what you get for armies and things like that. So try and kind of steer clear of anything that encourages people to absolutely crush people. But it was the biggest one we've had, 24 players. So we had 2 late sign-ups after our list review. They were both Orcs and Goblins players. So we were talking about our faction breakdown. Didn't have a single Orcs and Goblins player, and then 2 signed up in the last day or 2 before the event. So,
obviously, they watched the stream and went, actually, we better get on with that.
We can take this. And one of them almost did. But then that, obviously, because they were the last 2 to sign up, I paired them into each other in round 1, which meant there was a lot of screaming and shouting going on in the first turn, right in the middle of the ball. That always seems to happen when Orcs and Goblins players play each other. Yeah. They seem to be having more fun than everybody else combined.
So I actually can't. I only briefly looked. I can only remember one of the 2 Orcs and Goblin players. What was the? So John Dale was one of them. John is obviously a very good player. Yeah. Who was the other player?
Very good player. Yeah. So the other one was Gareth, who was a guy I played in Canterbury a couple of months. We'll probably start the year now. Actually, that's dragged on a bit. And he has his Orcs and Goblins list that has loads of it is random movement stuff. He has the Arachnarok Spider, and then it's loads of squig hogs, mangler squigs, all stuff where you're just not entirely sure how far or where it's going to move each round,
Sure.
which leads to some hilarity. He did lose all of his games on Saturday, but he just bought a one-day ticket, so he wasn't coming for both days. But
So that's why I was asking, because I was going to say, poor whoever, because they had to play John round one. Your reward for buying a ticket late is having to play against John. I mean, someone has to, but still.
John also...
In terms of strength, I want to stress that I'm talking about John being a good player, because I realise outside the context, it's... Go ahead.
No, he's great, and the one round he lost because he was holding back from charging into stuff, and I told him afterwards, "You're an orc player, man. Why were you holding back?" And he agreed.
That's fair.
So yeah, no, it was a really good weekend. Really enjoyed it. Had a great laugh. And I think the missions worked out quite well. The people, no one was sort of complaining, but I had too much or too little. Might add maybe a little bit more secondaries in, maybe a couple. When I'm doing like strategic locations, I'll probably bump it up to 4 instead of 3, just to increase the number. Although I had kind of changed the position of the objective, so it's a bit more like 40k rather than having...
I think your scoring is a little lighter than I'd want to go with, but that's also not bad for an event that was released, 3 weeks after the match play guide? Or maybe even less, because we saw it a long time before it actually came out. So
I was worried about people being overwhelmed by it all.
Yeah, so, absolutely. I think it'd be good to have a chat before your next one, just in terms of maybe an additional, like maybe let's start putting some cabbage trains in there. Obviously, a fantastic hobbage opportunity for those of you who like doing some hobbage, which we all know, of course, to be hobby. But I think, it's a really good middle ground for people who, obviously some people would have had a chance to play a lot of practice games, but some people don't. I played not even a coaching game. I played just a for fun game against one of my coaching students today, and I said, "Oh, remind me, have you played? How many games have you played with the missions?" He was like, "Well, we did 3 turns of a practice game using King of the Hill." I was like, "All right, cool. Let's play on strategic locations." And we get to the end of the game, you're like, "Wow, we've racked up all of these points on strategic locations." It's a hugely different feel to the game. Yeah,
definitely. And we had an odd number at a couple of points during the weekend, so I was able to get a few games in with it as well. So I really enjoyed strategic locations. It was good. And if I do say so myself, I did enjoy one of my missions where you can burn the objectives. That made for some interesting decisions for me as a player to make, which I quite liked. So
sure.
I'm definitely going to play around with that more. I think baggage trains is the easy one to add straight in. Again, I was kind of slightly concerned about hobby lag and stuff like that. I didn't want people to feel stressed about having to get stuff ready, so didn't put it in. But
that's fair.
I think that's immediately going into most missions in September. I think that's quite an easy one. And then just think about the number of objectives when I talk about strategic locations. I don't think I put King of Hill in. It does. I think it feels like it favours some of the armies which are already strong, like Undead, where they just get to pile everything into the middle and win a lot. So probably leave that one out. But definitely enjoyed all the others.
Secondary scoring, holding objectives where you get loads of points. What does this favour? Undead. The other Undead. Bretonnians who can bring loads of men-at-arms. It's a good job these armies are bad. There are obviously other armies in there that can go, actually, let's tweak our list. But for comedy purposes, yes.
Well, I think it's key as well. So like when I'm talking about my vampires, they are quite happy when there's maybe just like 2 locations quite close to each other that they need to hold.
Yes.
Because they're very contingent on all the buffs coming from the Mortis engine, from the BSB, things like that. So they need to be lumped together to do that. Whereas actually, if you've got enough objectives and you spread them across the board, like a unit of skeletons on its own without support is going to die incredibly quickly because it has no offensive capability whatsoever. So if you're forced as the vampire count player to spread out and have units playing around without any kind of support, I think you then start to struggle. Now, I think there's ways around that. You can put multiple necromancers in, you can try and spread things out and kind of spread your buffs out like that. But I think a lot of, at least the way I play vampires, does rely on people being in range of certain buffs. Or being in a position where I can take a charge and then use the fact that my screams are only 4 inches away, 6 inches away to jump forward and scream at you and hold you in place. Otherwise, I don't have any damage output. So for me to be spread across the whole 6-foot board, there are going to be units that I can't res back or I can't do any damage to. So I think it doesn't I think undead are going to be strong in those missions, but I think they'll be less strong than if they were able just to stay as a big lump and move up the board as a combined whole.
Yeah,
Does that make
yeah.
sense?
So that's interesting because this is something I was talking about after my game earlier today, which is I was playing a Tracing Warhost Death Star, where I've got 500 points of war. White Lions, obviously White Lions, a fan favorite on this channel. Really pleased to put them on the table and get some games in with them. They're a lot of fun to play, but it was 500 points of White Lions, basically 1,000 points of characters, and then 500 points of other infantry core scoring, because I just think that's a really solid way to go. Trades and Woodsman, really solid. But I deliberately put us on Strategic Locations 3, because that's 3 in the middle of the board, so you don't start with any. You have to move forwards into aggressive. My opponent was playing like a really aggressive Wild Hunt Wood Elf list. So I had to push forwards to get the scoring. But also, I couldn't easily hold in 4, because one of them's in your deployment zone. You get that one for free, and then you put your aggressive unit on one of the other ones, and then you go, okay, we're at a default tie. When there's 3 in the centre of the board, you've actually got to scrap over them, which I think is interesting. So we tried it on that with baggage carts as well. And that feels like there are ways that you can stretch a Death Star opponent like Undead or something like a big Death Star of White Lions. You can stretch that player very thin, and you can score a lot of points around them.
Yeah, I did wonder. I mean, I know Games Workshop has suggested strategic location 2, 3, 4. I don't necessarily see a reason why you couldn't go strategic locations 5 and set it up like a 40k board where you have objective in each.
I like the change. I don't want to just become another Age of Sigmar or...
no, you're right.
I want to keep it so, like, kill points is still the most important thing in the game for most missions. And I worry that there's maybe too far of a push away from that. And in fact, I think when in 3 to 6 months' time, maybe I'll be advising that perhaps we play a mixture. We've got... Here's some missions which have only endgame scoring. Here's, the bulk of them that have both end game and between game and kill points, and then like 1 or 2 missions where you just go only kill points, like maybe 1 only kill points, 1 only end of game, and then 3.
I started with breakpoint, so I start with one that is only kill points effectively. That's the first mission of the weekend, and then it starts adding stuff in. So yeah, I agree, and they have breakpoint as one of their suggested missions anyway, so I don't see any reason why you can't keep that in there and feel okay about it. It's just, definitely.
Jay in chat says, played against 16 Hex Wraiths on the weekend. Boy, do they do some damage. Jay, have you considered using only Warriors of Chaos? And then they are not scary at all, because you get to just kill them before they do anything. I feel like that's probably the way to go. I think, if I remember correct, Jay only plays demons. And I could be wrong with that, but if I'm right, then I'm sorry. No, wait, demons have magical attacks as well, which is something that I remembered very late on last week.
We did have a very cool Khorne demon list this weekend. 2 Bloodthirsters.
Oh,
big unit of Bloodthirsters.
Did it do as well as I expect? Which is not very well.
I think it was mid-table. A mid-table finish, I think, would be the best it was described. I think he got 2 wins over the weekend, maybe 3. But he did have to play Cathay at least once, maybe twice.
I think that's an incredible result. If you come mid-table with pure Khorne demons, I think you must have played pretty well to get there. So congratulations. That is, absolutely.
It was good.
All right, well, let's talk about the reason that we're here, which is...
Why this isn't a tier list day.
Yeah, absolutely. It's difficult. I'm not sure if I want to do a tier list next week or if I want to maybe wait another couple of weeks and just find something else to talk about next Tuesday, because we're so early into the meta that I think I can talk about stuff, but some of it's speculative. So maybe there's like a speculative tier list that'd be fun to do. But I need to have a think about that. I'll have a think about it over the weekend and
we're doing a really cool narrative thing this weekend, actually. So a local one by our club. So I could always go through that. That would be really interesting. A little narrative scenario from the Guarded Isle book. So we've got 8 of us having a narrative day. I know. What is this?
People having fun, enjoying their hobby. Nerds.
We're having a big 8-player battle.
that sounds pretty epic.
I'll take some photos.
I played some Underworld on Sunday because Sunday was my birthday, so I went and saw my mate Craig. Had a good time with that, and my headset's just made a noise that sounds like it might have turned off. Can you talk for me?
I'm talking right now.
Oh no, it's okay. It's okay.
It's all good.
I got a new headset. It was
It does
just
look very fancy.
a relatively cheap one from Amazon because the last one was starting to go out. But yeah, it's not the most reliable. I'm learning. Anyway, so you're gonna have to have the stream open, I'm afraid, Lewis, because I still haven't got a good system to share with you while also sharing. Can you see the picture that we've got up?
I will give it a go. Bear with me.
So for while Lewis is
Filling
loading up
for us.
the stream, we've got basically here the three different metrics that we want to talk about. There's two conversations. There's the conversation: should you have your first decider as the number of games won, and then also go victory points or something else, or should you go victory points first and then something else? I don't think anyone is necessarily arguing that strength of schedule as a primary scoring category is what you should go for. I don't know that would work very well. Do you want to explain what strength of schedule is?
Yes. Sorry, bear with me. I'm messing around with things to make things work, and it's not going well because I've lost you completely. But we'll
That's
be
fine,
there.
you don't need to
Right,
see me.
here we go. I'm on it. Right, yes. So, strength of schedule. Really, there's a number of different ways that you can place events. I.e., if depending on like where you position people over the course of an event in terms of how well they've done during that event, whether they come first, third, eighth, whatever. And lots of them are really obvious, like wins and victory points. But strength of schedule is a metric designed to rank players by how well their opponents did over the course of the weekend, which is in theory a proxy for how difficult a game you had into that particular opponent. So if you played an opponent that won 4 out of 5 of their games, then in theory that's harder than playing someone that lost all of their games.
Yeah.
So you're not penalised for getting paired into much better opponents and getting lower scores as a result.
Yes.
You're rewarded for getting paired into better opponents. Now, better is obviously a very subjective term and depends on a huge number of different things. But it's the win rate on any given weekend, I think, is a good metric for how well your opponents have done and therefore how tricky a game you had playing into them as a result. And it's the placing system that I use as the tiebreaker after wins. So we have the first tiebreaker is the main metric by which someone's placed at the Saffron Slam is the number of wins they've got. So if you win all 5 of your games and no one else does, you'll come first. But we ended up in a situation where this weekend we've dropped to our first tiebreaker, which is strength of schedule, because we're in a position where 4 players finished the weekend on 4 wins and 1 loss. Because just how all the pairings worked out, no one actually won all 5 of their games. Not even the Cathay player with the really cool Cathay list that is clearly very powerful. He lost a game into the Orcs and Goblins.
Yeah.
So we ended up as a position where 4 players, all on 4 wins, needed to be to kind of ranked in some way that determined how they would go. So strength of schedule is what I choose as the first tiebreaker, and then it's battle points, victory points after that. So in theory, if you've both got the same opponent's win rate, you'll end up being paired by how many victory points you've got over the course of the weekend.
Yeah.
For the Saffron Slam, and the reason that we're talking about this is that it ended in quite an odd way, in where the good Dr. Luke, who was a brilliant player, ended up with 4 close wins and a close loss, but came first. Whereas Brian's Cathay, who basically had 4 crushing wins and a relatively close loss, came second.
Yeah.
Now, when you're just looking at that, you think, oh, well, Brian won massively. He won 4 games, absolutely crushed 4 people, and then just happened to lose a game. And that's cost him the overall podium, or the overall the win. And so lots of questions coming in, lots of comments coming in on various posts and things that I was doing. But how comes Luke's won? It doesn't look he's got that many victory points, and he hadn't. But based on my placing system, he played players that had higher win rates than Brian did over the course of the weekend. Not by a huge amount, literally only a couple of percent. So there wasn't a lot in it at all. But according to the system, Luke played people that were slightly better than Brian over the course of the weekend. So for Luke to get 4 wins is actually harder than Brian getting 4 wins. Now, obviously, it doesn't take into fact like the strength of the factions and things like that. You could make an argument that Brian had a much stronger faction than Luke did.
Sure.
Luke was running his Wolves of the Sea and Brian's running Cathay. So potentially that would flow even more in Luke's favour. But it doesn't take into account the kind of relative strength of the factions in the wider meta. It's just the win rate from the weekend.
Yeah. So just to like talk through the differences. So I mean, we haven't even talked about whether you're using wins versus victory point as your primary scoring indicator. Now, both of us coming from 40k, that, wins being the number one decider is just, that is what it is. There's no argument about it. And it's definitely my preference, but some people do like having tournaments which are victory point led, where it doesn't matter how many games you win, it just matters how many victory points you get overall. And that does lead to events where you can have people losing games but winning events where other people haven't lost games. So you can have someone who's won all 5 of the games do worse in the victory point tournament than someone who went 4-1 and even lost to the person who won all of the games. And I don't like that, and people do like that, and I don't think people are wrong to like that version. There's bias for people like the sorts of things that they're used to, and that used to be more of a fantasy classic than it is now. But I think when you come into that, it prioritizes stomping games more than anything else. And for me, victory points over anything else as a scoring metric prioritizes you to bring armies that can table enemies. I don't like that. I like having more tactical depth to my list. I'm not a player who looks to squeeze 2,000 points out of my opponent every game. I will try and turn a losing matchup to a small win. I will try and turn a win into a bigger win, of course. But if you're in a position where, there's a risk between, I could get a bigger win here by killing the general, or if I don't do it, I might end up losing. I think it's more skillful to be able to understand when you shouldn't push for points because you're at more of a risk of losing. And I think it incentivizes that sort of playstyle. So that's my personal preference and bias towards not having victory points as a primary scoring metric. Now,
I agree with that completely, and I've got a really good example of a situation that didn't occur this weekend but has occurred previously, and it was in a 40k event, but it occurred previously, and why I think it highlights the example of why I choose wins, strength of schedule, and then victory points as my order of preference for ranking players. So as you say, victory points into wins. Victory points as the first one is what some people were used to from 8th edition. Obviously, we've got also a lot of TOs will have wins as their first one, then victory points as their second one. So if all 4 players are on 4 wins, then the battle points come after that. So therefore, whoever's got the bigger wins the event overall. But I also had a look. There's an event that used wins as the top one, then win path, i.e. how far you got into the event before you lost the game. Then strength of schedule, then victory points. That feels a little bit more complex, but I can see why they've done that.
Sure.
And then there's other events as well that go around adding in sportsmanship scores, adding in painting scores, and things like that to give you an overall score. So it's
I
not
like
even
a best
based
general,
on
and I like a best overall. I don't think the winner of a tournament should be anything outside of games, like how you do at a game. But I don't think there's anything wrong for having like a best overall as well as a best general. Just before we get people complaining in the comments that modern day Throne of Skulls is a tragedy, yada yada. I did really well at my first Throne of Skulls because I was nice to people and I had painting scores, and even though I was bad at the game back 8th edition 40k, and they called me up and I got a really cool trophy and I was like, what? Anyway, ignited the love for competitive Warhammer, and I'm still here. It got me hook, line and sinker. Anyway, what I wanted to say is I think
is what's really important before we go into the whys and wherefores is that any system you choose to place players is going to create weird little oddities, odd situations where you think someone who should have won didn't win, or someone who shouldn't have won did win. That'll happen on any of them, and you can make arguments for and against all of these different systems. So I think when you're settling on a pairing system to use for an event, you want to try and reward the types of play, and this is obviously that's heavily caveated on all number of things. The types of play you want to see at the event, and this is disincentivize the type of play you don't want to see.
Sure.
I think that's why some people do put painting and sportsmanship as a primary part of their event kind of scoring, in that's what they want to encourage. They want people to play in the right spirit and play with really nice armies, and they want to reward that, and therefore players going into that event know that they are going to be rewarded for doing those things. And all of these should be advertised by the event organizer in advance, so you should never have to go to an event with a placing system you don't agree with or don't like, because you should know that in advance, so you just don't buy a ticket. Or you go to events because of that, or it doesn't even matter, and you place where you place, and it's not that important to you. So yeah, just wanted to kind of get that caveat in there. There's always going to be weird and wonderful questions of why it doesn't work or does work in a certain different way.
Sure. What's interesting is we definitely disagree on what we would like our secondary and tertiary metrics to be. I don't like strength of schedule, and I understand why people do like it. But the reason that I don't like it is it's out of my control. Basically, once the pairing's in, if I am in... Hey, John's here. Hello, John. I was just saying nice things about you, but it's okay, you've missed it.
Back 10 minutes ago.
Absolutely. So, I don't like strength of schedule because it's, to some degree, out of your control after the pairings are done. Because if you are, say, going into the last round, and you and your opponent have a similar sort of victory points, you've both pushed very well, you've got two very good players in an event, and you're both going to win all of your games. Let's say that's the situation we're in. One player is going to win in that situation because of the people that they played against. And I don't like that it is out of my control to the degree where I just go, oh, okay, well, I got some easier games, but I would back myself to have beaten all of the other players here. And that's because, I'm going to a tournament with the goal of winning, and I feel like I'm good enough to win at this tournament, this theoretical tournament. I'm talking in the example. I'm not just bigging myself up for no reason. It's out of my control. It's who randomly gets paired into each other that's going to win.
So that's the classic example that I immediately flip back to you and say, if you're doing a system that favours victory points, once you've sorted out your wins, is that you're equally at the mercy of who you've been paired against.
I disagree.
Because if you were in exactly that same situation and you've got two people who won all 5 of their games, but you've lost because you had to play 5 really good players and your opponent had to play 5 average players and just 20 owed them nice and easy, you'd look at that and go, well, hang on a minute, I've worked a lot harder for this 5-0 than my opponent.
I've lost a tournament because I've had a really hard run and someone who I think is a less experienced player. And you would never begrudge them winning it, but I've had that experience, and for me that's just part of tournament. There's always going to be randomness in there, and you can't get rid of all of the randomness. So that's I'm coming into it with the acceptance that sometimes you just get screwed. Like 40k events back in the day, I used to I hit Alex Petford, England international player, and he was always playing my hard counter army at the time I was going to tournaments, and they were like 3 events over 8 months, I think, where I played him in the first or second round, one of which I lost at LGT that year, the big 1,000 player event. So if you care about these sort of tournament points, that's a really big one. You want to do well, there's more pressure on you. I lost my first game, I messed up. My reward for losing my first game was I got to play international England player Alex Petford playing my hard counter. So sometimes you do just get those, and it sucks. But what I would say in terms of going back to the strength of schedule is that it's still in my hands. It's harder. It is absolutely harder, and I understand. But if I'm stood across the table from someone and I know that they're a really good player and the other person who's in contention to win is playing someone who I think is less technically skilled, is probably going to be put up less of a fight, it's going to be easier to get points against them, I'm at a disadvantage, but I can still beat them. Whereas if we're flipped, if we're in strength and schedule, and my opponent's playing against a really good player, and I'm playing against the person who has a worse win record at this event, I know that if we both win our games, no matter how well I do in the game, even if I get a 20-0 and they just squeak a win, I've lost the tournament because the pairings have already been done. So that's my personal issue with it. I don't think you shouldn't use it, but that's my perspective, and it comes down to, you know, the whole if you're into philosophy, locus of control, and do I feel like my action, like I'm in control of my actions, yada yada. And I'm always like, yeah, I control my own destiny.
No, 100%, and I think that's a completely fair argument for sure. But I think where perhaps if I give the example that I had in a 40k event, and maybe it may be change your mind, it might not change your mind, but it comes down to whether you think, as a result of pairing into someone that's not as player as you, whether you don't then have a positive role to play as an opponent in that individual's event experience and events in their future games. Because where this kind of really, as you say, that issue can occur is in the first 1 or 2 rounds before you start getting paired against people of a similar skill level to you.
Sure.
In that you might just end up against someone who's just there for a laugh, for example, or isn't very experienced. And you would feel in your example that has disadvantaged you through no fault of your own.
Sure.
In the same way that I would feel that you just playing against people that weren't very good, it disadvantages the person who's had a hard weekend. But the example from 40k, we ended up in a situation where we had a player who had knowingly come to the event, wanted to do well. They were pushing for at least a podium place, and they wanted to be at the top of the event. And fair enough, lots of people come to events for different reasons, and some people come to win, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
He was playing an average player who was quite new to 40k, new to the game, doing okay, but still relatively early round in the event, and they were clearly trying to improve as a player.
Yeah.
And actually, the way that game started, the average player was doing quite a good job. They were keeping the game close. It was still in the good player's favour, sort of 11-9, 12-8 sort of level. But fundamentally, that average player was doing a really good job keeping it close and doing as best they could. Until the point where that player made a bit of a cock-up and put themselves in a position where the good player was going to be able to get off quite a key charge that effectively would mean he would absolutely crush the average player. He gets that charge in, picks up a really important unit, catches, this is when warlords mattered, catches his warlord, and basically turns the game from what would have been a close win to that good player into a 20-0 win. Now, and this is where I think the scoring system of an event, or the pairing system of an event, comes in. So in a system, you as the good player in that situation, you've got kind of 2 choices, haven't you? In an event scenario, you keep quiet, and you say, right, I am going to absolutely crush that player. They've made a mistake. They're at an event. They've made a mistake. I'm perfectly within my rights to exploit that. Or you warn them and say, FYI, what you've just done has basically turned this from a nice close game we were playing well to me utterly destroying you. Now, if you're in a pairing system which encourages 20-0 wins, big wins, you are incentivized by me as a TO to absolutely crush that player, because otherwise there's a risk that someone else who wins all of their games is just going to have done better than you because you acted to help that opponent and lost a load of victory points as a result. So my system has encouraged you to crush that player. However, in a system where actually your placing isn't primarily based on how badly you've crushed someone, it's more based on how good a player you've played. Does the system incentivize you to go to that player? FYI, you've made a big mistake here. In that situation, I would suggest you do this, this, and this. That means I'm not going to be able to absolutely crush you. And you allow that player to take back the move they've made or something like that. And fundamentally, the situation you get to is that the less good player has hopefully learned quite an important lesson at that point, halfway through that game, and is a mistake that they will hopefully not make in the next game. And the argument that less good player is now slightly better as a result of a little bit of coaching from the much better player, and accordingly in the next game a similar situation comes along and that player doesn't make that mistake again. So by the end of the event, by being a helpful player sort of coaching your opponents, that good player who's going for the podium has podiumed, but also helped improve their local community just by a small amount. I'm not saying this is like a massive fundamental change or anything, just a small amount. But actually, when you scale that up, if every player has that as their mindset during an event, rather than I need to get as many points as possible off this guy, or I'm not going to be able to get to the top, you does your community, does your event community at the end of a weekend end up in a stronger position as a result of that? I would argue yes, it has done, because actually the TO has incentivized people to help each other and help each other get better, because that's how you do well at an event, rather than incentivize people to crush each other because that's how you do well at an event.
So I think there's a lot of things to address here. So I personally, and you know this, I play generally like that anyway. Like I try to be as I give as much sportsmanship in a game as possible. That's important to me as an individual, and it's such a it's a hard line to walk. I don't want to sit here and be like, oh, I'll always point out mistakes that my opponents make at the table, because then you don't do it in one situation. Because you don't feel like, where's the invisible line? I think you should be as nice to your opponent as you feel like you could. You should be, and I try to do that, and I'm overly giving, and I've definitely lost games at tournaments because I've been too forgiving to an opponent, and I'm okay with that. I'd prefer that for me personally as my personal standard. However, I don't think it's an expectation that I would have that someone going to a tournament should in any way be expected to do anything other than, and you should always be a good opponent. You should always be a pleasure to play with. For me, I want, after the game, people to go, God, that was that was an awful game to play the army. I loved playing against you, but you absolutely crushed me. Like, that's the sort of absolute peak where someone's saying the game was like, oh my God, I got destroyed, but you were fantastic. If you can hit that balance, so hard to hit, but if you can hit that, I think that's the ideal. I don't think there's an expectation that people should be helping their opponents at a tournament. It is a competitive experience, and I don't think you're wrong for wanting that. And, different events will favour different things, but I think generally someone going to an event with the goal of winning while also being an incredible sport and just being a nice opponent, there's nothing wrong with them not trying to improve their opponent's gameplay at the detriment of their own. I don't think that's necessarily a standard that I would hold for people, while I might potentially hold it for myself.
Yeah.
I don't know if we've got any more to go on that one. It's hard to ride that line, I think, realistically.
No, absolutely. And I think it's tricky, because this is so the pairing system I use is what Games Workshop recommend.
Yeah.
For 40k anyway. I don't know if they've put a recommended way in for Old World. So clearly that's how they want their games to be played. So kind of going with that is one argument to it as well. But yeah, I think you want to be you as a player are always a gentleman to play against. It's always a great game, even when it's brutal. And I absolutely agree with you. So for me personally, if I get smashed, I get smashed. I'm absolutely fine. I'll learn a lot from that.
Yeah.
But I'm always coming at this from the perspective of a newer player. And whilst I understand, yes, you're going to a tournament, you're going to a competitive environment, I think we as TOs, and it's a hill I'll definitely die on, we should be doing everything to make an experience that's as friendly for newer players to help grow our community as possible. And I think whilst you don't necessarily feel that scoring system, or that placing system, sorry, not scoring system, would change the way you play, because you're fundamentally a really, really good player, and you're actually a really nice person to play against, and you will always have that kind of really positive interaction during a game. I don't think that's the case for everybody. I don't think everyone plays like you play, and there are people who potentially might not approach that example situation in the way that you would.
Yeah.
Either using it as a coaching experience at the end of the game, or even raising it during the game. I think there's people out there who would just crush someone and walk away and leave that person sitting there feeling like, I've made a mistake and I don't really understand what I've done wrong, and now I'm feeling a bit lost. And I think if that individual is motivated by winning the event, and as long as it's made clear in advance, I think that individual needs to know in advance that destroying people isn't going to be the thing that wins them the event. They're going to win an event based on how tricky their games were and how good their opponents were. And that one of the only ways they can help control that is to try and help the opponents that they play get better and therefore potentially get better results.
I'm sorry, just to jump in, I'm not sure I've just explained my position on this correctly. So I have no issue with you running strength of schedule. I think it works well with your philosophy. Edward Moore keeps saying that in the chat, and I do want to point out I absolutely agree with your point, Edward. And I think it does help to promote for what you're saying. I also agree with what you're saying in that it helps. It does make people more likely to do that sort of thing. What I am talking about is my personal preference, and I can be happy with, going to events that don't have things to my personal preference, and it's not a big deal. But it's more like I've gone to a lot of events with both strength of schedule and victory points as a secondary marker, and I've had more feel bad moments at strength of schedule for me personally. Do I think that means that we shouldn't use them? No. It's just if I'm talking about my personal philosophy. And it's also difficult, and I think your event is more... I agree. We should promote having newer people to the scene. I always love... One of my favourite things is playing a newer player at a tournament, or the first time they've gone to a tournament game. And I've talked about this before, and it's not for the reason of it's an easy game. I think I'm now at a point where I can... A lot of the games that I play, I feel comfortable going into that I will do reasonably well. And just, so it's not that I'm hunting for an easy game. I like having that experience with someone where you do more of a little bit of a coaching, first time you're playing here, this is the sort of vibe it's going to be, careful here, or, we need to do things in these ways. So I do like that. But yeah, basically all my complaints about strength of schedule are personal gripes, as opposed to this shouldn't exist. So just wanted to put that in before we get any further.
No, 100%. No, absolutely, yeah. And as I said at the start, there's advantages to all systems, isn't there? And actually, I think, as with all of these things, if it's communicated clearly in the event pack, in advance of the event, people can make their purchasing decisions. If this is something that they absolutely hate or absolutely love, they can make their purchasing decisions based on that. And then otherwise, everybody knows in advance what they're walking into, and you can't have too many complaints, really, can you? Because if it's something that you really value as part of your event experience, is the exact placing metric that's used. If you end up on the same number of wins or same number of points as someone else, then I guess you can make that decision in advance. And actually, realistically, the best way to do all of this is for people to win. I've got loads of people all on the same wins at the end, or all on the same whatever system you've chosen, is you do a top cut and you play another set of games. Now, that's not realistic. It's not realistic for me as a TO, because I end up staying at the venue till bloody midnight, like a lot of the big 40k events do. But that's fundamentally how you would kind of smooth this out, so none of this makes a difference. And you end up in a position where you only have one winner. And that would be the best way. But in an imperfect world, with an imperfect system, then I like it. So, but we've got some graphs on the screen, Ed. That should we just give some examples of how the different placing systems would have worked out?
Sure. So let's start off with, and I will lead because there's a little bit of lag between what you'll see and what I've clicked on the stream. So first of all, wins, and this is the reason that we're having this argument. So the first event, there was a 3 or 4 way 4-1 split where multiple of us did have 4 wins and 1 loss. The second event, we're talking purely 2-day events, there was a clear winner. There was someone with 4 wins and a draw, and everyone else had 4 wins and a loss. So there was someone who was head and head above. If we go into this event, we can see that there is a 4-way tie, and one person has 3 wins and a draw. So we've got Luke, Brian, Ed, and John all have 4 wins and a loss, and then Scott has 3 wins, a loss, and a draw. So that's why we're sort of that's what sparked this discussion more than anything else. If we then move on to, let's go to the strength of schedule first, because that's what you actually looked at, and you can see here I've got them kept in the same order so you can see how things change. But if we go from left to right using strength of schedule, it does go Luke first because he played against opponents who had more success than he had, all the way down through Brian, Ed, John, Scott, and it goes down in that line.
Exactly.
Do you want to move on to then victory points? Is that the next one to talk about?
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's important to note just from that first graph that obviously when you've got 4 people all on the same number of wins like that, someone's always going to lose out.
Yeah.
Someone has to take fourth, so they don't get the trophy, they don't get the certificate.
It's true.
And I had some really cool Slam trophies this time, which is why it's sad not to see Pip on this list, because he's podiumed at every single event until I got Lizardman trophies and then didn't podium.
Yeah.
So he was not too impressed.
He should have played better.
Yeah, you move across to move across to victory points, and this highlights here, and you obviously kept the order the same. So Luke, who came first in my system, actually would have come fourth.
Yeah.
Based on this after wins. Obviously Scott has more, but he has fewer wins, so he would always have been in fifth place in this metric.
Sure.
He comes in more recently, but Brian sits there on 83 points. So he has got, and obviously 20 is your maximum from any given game. So he's effectively got 4 18s, and I think he got 4 18s or 20s, and then a relatively small loss there to get him up to 83. So he's crushed 4 people and then lost once. And then which would have been in second place would have been John instead, because he got 70 points. So he would have gone from fourth to second, and then Ed's and his Bretonians would have stayed exactly where he was in third place. So Ed is nice and consistent. And then it would have dropped Luke out of the top 3, sorry.
And I think this shows, as an example, something that even though I like VP as my secondary metric, so I like wins then VP because it removes some of this issue. But VPs, especially if you go VPs first, that incentivise armies that just want to table your opponent. And I think that really limits the field. And especially now that we have Cathay, which is an army that can table the opponent with limited interaction, I really, really don't want to see, 20-0 events as like the primary metric as ones that I go to. If I'm not going to your event, then I can't really have a strong opinion, I guess, but I don't want to play at 20 events where I'm just going to face against like 5 Cathay balloon lists and have an awful time.
Yeah. No, exactly, and this is the argument I think that I was having a discussion with Luke actually about this, because obviously he won his unexpected winner in the end because he got a lot of close wins and a close loss, so never scored massively high. His army, and you could argue maybe dwarves, are quite similar as well. They don't get massive scores. They're not armies that go and absolutely crush people in the way that Cathay would or Bretonians would. They're not particularly easy to go out there and absolutely hammer your opponent and score loads of points. So in this wins then victory points scenario, Luke, unless he wins all 5 of his games, has no realistic chance of getting on the podium unless he changes his army, exactly as you say. And does he go to pick a faction that is much more likely to go and crush people? And again, just the same conversation we've had about whether we want to encourage that or not. That's a different conversation, isn't it? But that's kind of where he feels he'd ended up with his Wolves of the Sea, in that he knows he can win even against some of the best players, but they're not going to be crushing victories. It's going to scrape through some of these games, and they're not. I think there's a difference there between a faction being able to only get close wins and then a faction that's deliberately avoiding interacting and avoiding opponents to deliberately get low wins. That's not why there's a difference there. And actually, I think the match play guide and the new objectives really help with that, in that if you're just going to castle up in a corner and not play the game, which is very boring, you don't want to encourage that at all, your opponent's just going to start getting on these objectives and start racking up loads of points. So you're not going to be able to play like that in the new edition.
Yes, it's a direct nerf to how I was winning events last year.
Yeah. Exactly.
Which I was calling to be nerfed, by the way. So big fan of that. It's like, man, this sucks that I'm doing it. Other people should... someone should fix this.
Someone should stop this.
Yeah.
But yeah, in theory, you shouldn't, in the new rules pack, be able to have an uninteractive game, because people will be able to score enough points from the objectives that you'll just lose by doing that. So you're going to need to go out and play the game and try and get on these objectives. They're not big scoring, but they're enough that you'll lose the game. Interesting. If you throw up, I'm hoping the next one is victory points as the primary, and then wins after that.
Yes. So the next one is. I just put them as like, here's the victory points, here's the wins, here's the strength of schedule. I didn't put them as like all 3 together.
No, I mean, so what would have happened? I'll talk through it anyway. So if you'd have used the system where you literally just rank people by how many points they've got, the top 5 looks completely different.
Sure.
So in first place you have Brian with his 83 points. He just wins overall, and this is doesn't matter how many games you've won. You could have lost all your games, but scored more than everybody else.
That's hard to do.
That's hard to do. I'm exaggerating there slightly.
I dislike the system. I will push back on that level of hyperbole. Just it's possible to go 4-1 or 3-2 in some situations and beat people who go 5-0, but I don't think you can go 0-5.
No, definitely not. I'm being facetious. Yeah. Brian's Cafe would have been in top with 83, and John's Orcs in second with 70. So that's all's fair. But then you have James, who's not featured in the top 5. I think he finished 7th, overall in the event. He had 70 victory points. So he'd have gone straight into 3rd place. And then Michael and his Tomb Kings, who I think finished 9th or 10th, something like that, had 65 points. So he would have gone straight into 4th place. Yeah. And then Ed would have propped up 5th place with 60 points with his Bretts. So you'd have been in a position where Scott's Vampire Counts are completely out of the top 5 entirely. Luke's Wolves of the Sea completely out of the top 5. And 2 new players come in who, at the moment, win the wins-based system, because Michael and his Tomb Kings won 3 games. Yeah. So he wasn't in that top 5 in a wins-based system, but in a points-based system, done quite well. Not that he didn't do well, you know what I mean? Would have made the top 5.
Done quite well-er.
Quite well-er. And then the last one, so that's just interesting looking at victory points as a thing. I don't think that's something that either of us would kind of go for, but it's definitely what 8th edition used to use for scoring, and it's something that people are talking about. And then the other one would have been that you go wins, win path, then strength of schedule, then victory points. And again, that would have changed it completely as well. John's Orcs, he would have come first, because he won 4 games before he lost again. So that would have put him in first. Then Brian's Cathay would have been second again, because he went 3 games before a loss, and had a 60% strength of schedule. Then Ed's Bretonians, again 3 games before a loss, but a slightly lower strength of schedule. Then Luke would have been in 4th, and Scott would have been in 5th, because Luke got 2 wins before he lost, and Scott lost his first game.
So that one is interesting, because that does have some real feels bad, and to the point where you might get people dropping on day one because they lose. Like, if you've got 2 players let's say there's like three really good players, and theoretically all of them could beat each other, and you go in a circle and like you end up with 3 players who are 4-1. If one of them loses their first game against one of the other good players, even though theoretically under victory points or strength of schedule they could still go on to win it through win path, they're like, best I can get here is second or third realistically. So I may as well just go home if my goal is to win it. So I think that one has more feel bads to it, but I also kind of like it as like maybe a tertiary. So it's not the secondary. So it goes wins, then something else, then strength. If you're tied on victory points, for example, then you go like, okay, so where did you get your loss? Did you have a slightly easier? And I think it pairs well with strength of schedule from that perspective, because strength of schedule is how hard were your games against your opponent, and it's going, okay, well, my run was equally as hard as yours, but you had the easier run because you got a loss earlier, so you were playing in the lower bracket, so theoretically you had an easier run up until the end, and that gives you an advantage in some ways. But yeah, anyway, sorry, back to what you were saying.
No, 100%, I completely agree, and that's really interesting. Yeah, because it's really depends on your pairings like that. I think you'd need to pre-seed players potentially for that to be something. I don't know, and that's a whole discussion itself about how you actually, all events, if anyone doesn't know, get paired randomly in the first round, and then there'll be some kind of pairing system for the rest of it, usually based on how many wins you've got. So
well, you say that
random.
There's quite a common thing, which is if you're in the same team, you don't play against each other. Or
so BCP does that by standard.
Some events you'll go to, and if you drove up with someone and you get paired into the same player, the TL go, oh, anyone travel up here together and play against each other a lot. Do you want to seed it? And that does knock down the level of competitive integrity because you're theoretically dodging a hard matchup. But
exactly.
It's what do you want to achieve with your event, right?
100%. And it's interesting. I've seen a few comments coming up about, oh well, Luke lost to Brian, so Brian should have won, and such questions like that. Brian lost to John, who came fourth.
Who did John lose to?
So John should have won. So
who did John lose to?
John then lost to Ed's Bretts.
Well, Ed should have won. And I'm going to leave it there because I coach Ed. So...
So that's Chris. Basically, all four of those lost to each other, effectively.
Yeah, as you'd expect in this sort of like 4-1, lots of good players at the top.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's really difficult. I've just saw a few comments coming up, so we'll Brian
I hope
should
my
have won
facetious point highlights why that's not a real argument.
But yeah, I think basically, I mean, all the systems that we've just gone through, the different examples there, the only one that changes the top 5 is the victory points first system. All the others have exactly the same people in the top 5, just in a slightly different order. So I'm hoping that all of those in the top 5 from the weekend, I think the one who potentially has right to feel slightly put out is John, who obviously missed out on a trophy as a result of just ending up in 4th.
Sure.
But fundamentally, they're all brilliant players who played exceptionally well, all beat each other over the course of the weekend, and basically there was 10% in strength of schedule to separate them and about 20 odd victory points to separate them. So fundamentally over the course of the weekend you could play around the edges to maybe tweak who comes first, second and third, but fundamentally all of those players deserve all their flat for winning 4 games in that field and doing incredibly well to get to that point. And hopefully, I mean, a few of them how great a weekend they had and they really enjoyed it, and that all the discussion around different placing system was interesting but not a reflection on the event. I think they've all done incredibly well to get to that point, and should be quite rightly proud, even though John obviously did miss out on a fancy Slam trophy.
They're nice. And you're still holding mine, as I will say every time it comes up.
Yes, you're welcome to come pick them up anytime.
We've talked about this. You're going to have to come to Nottingham at some point. Although I have passed my driving test now, so theoretically...
I've got a driving test now, so I'm expecting you to rock up outside.
I don't have a car, so, that's... And it's also not necessarily on the... John says, play for the draw final round. Thought the draw was 300 points, lost by 230. Read the rules pack. That's rough, John. Sorry to hear that. As another man who is lax on reading rules packs, I empathise, and I've definitely made similar sorts of mistakes and gone, well, that sucks for me.
I think there's a world John could have won that game if he'd have just gone for it. Obviously risky because Ed is a great player, and there's a good chance that Ed just goes, no, fuck you, and beats you even further.
It'd be really funny if he got the draw. Ed would have been the person to play against the tournament winner who only needed a draw to force victory in the final round.
Twice in a row.
We'd be developing some sort of like PTSD response in him, where we get to game 5 and he's playing against someone who's 4-0 and he just has a meltdown. Poor guy.
For sure. There was I saw a few comments as well about people saying that potentially you could do some kind of knockout system. I think that's basically what win path is. Effectively, once you lose a game, if someone wins another game after you're effectively knocked out. You still get to play all 5 of your games, but you're effectively knocked out. As soon as you lose a game, that's it, you're out.
I would enjoy the event a lot less if I knew that my chance of doing anything important ended the second I lost a game. And that's talking specifically about smaller events.
Yeah.
When you get to 60 or 70
stress
players,
for the early round, doesn't it?
You need to win all of your games to have a chance of coming top 3. But it's, at the smaller events, which is realistically what we're talking about, because that's what is like the majority of old world events at the moment. Yeah. Cool.
But
anything else you want to talk about here, or should we go on to the questions? Because we've got some questions, including questions that are related to this episode.
Good. Hopefully we can just ignore the feet ones. I think, but fundamentally, I think you can choose whatever system you want, communicate well in advance. Every system has advantages and disadvantages. I like to think my system encourages people to be friendlier and push towards helping everybody. And I will live in my little fantasy fairy world thinking about that moving forwards. Questions then.
Questions.
You need me to get them up?
No, I got them here. I think we can probably just skip Amy's question because we've done an entire episode on it. So if there's anything that we haven't covered here, Amy, just ping us and we can, discuss that more down the line. But I think it's basically just talking about what is what's wrong with using strength of schedule, and that was the episode. So I think we don't need to necessarily dig into that one. But yeah, like I say, if there's anything we missed there that you wanted to address, just ask us in the VIP section. Oh yeah, also, these questions are asked by channel members of Longbeard tier above. If you want to ask your questions, you can do so by joining the channel and posting on Discord. If you have joined the channel and you haven't got a role, make sure you type in Discord need role and I can apply it on there for you. You can also ask questions in chat. We do generally just get to those as well. Callum says, which format is best for making the person who came in third come in seventh?
Well, I think we've demonstrated the victory point system. If we do that first,
so this is Callum was at an event where the person who was running the event had a bit of a cock up in some way, and I can't remember the exact details. So apologies for this, but he should have come third and instead ended up seventh because he ran BCP in the wrong way or something like that. So that's the context there. Definitely no salt left over from that one, but also understandable. I would be pretty bummed.
Yes.
Steve
BCP
says,
can be a fickle mistress.
oh, it
sometimes.
really can. If I wanted to achieve second place, which system is most likely to result in that? I don't mind sharing second place with other people. Steve, you fuck. This is, of course, the constant meme of Close Order being the channel for coming second. I don't know why. I still don't know why. But I don't know. What would be the most, I guess, wins with...
Just don't have a tiebreaker.
No tiebreaker would be the way to make that the most
loads
likely.
of people coming second.
Yeah. Only if you only had one person going undefeated. Otherwise, you've got like 4 first places theoretically, and then like straight to 5th. Okay. Matthew says, few questions about the upcoming Arcane Journal / rumours. What Empire units are you most excited to add to a Jade Fleet list with Cathay? Let's start there. What units would you like? I think for me, cannons. Cathay doesn't have enough cannons, so I'd like to see more cannons.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Cannons. What would I want for Cathay? What do I feel like they're missing? Wizards. Wizards on, like, cheap wizards. That would be pretty neat. I can take...
I watched 4 Shugungans make a right mess of 4 out of 5 people this weekend, so I think they are pretty good. I don't know if they need any more wizards. Like, engineers would be cool.
Yeah.
Like, I know the cannons don't need the help, but it feels like they're maintaining their cannons with ogres, which seems to work for a volume of shots.
Yeah, can't be wise. Having an engineer and the ogres would be good. I love how in chat it says, Hams fan, why wouldn't you want to come second? And also YouTube has the live chatting system where it gives you points for commenting. And I don't know why it does it. And it only goes to like a weird amount. So if I look at the top fans here, currently it goes to like 150 or 200 or something like that. It's a weird new thing they're trialing. Anyway, it has number 2 next to his name when he said what's wrong with coming second. So if that was intentional, well done. But theoretically, that was a beautiful mistake. In terms of other units to add to, theoretically, the Griffin standard unit of veteran state troops would go pretty hard for Cathay.
Yeah, that would work quite
Just
well.
having them as like a cheap high combat res brick.
Yeah, or some harder hitting cavalry.
Better cavalry, yeah. Demigriffs would be cool. Having like an actual brawler unit would be pretty fun.
Yeah, or
I think
like
that's the main thing that Cathay feel like they're missing, some sort of like actual hard-hitting brawler unit.
Yes, yeah, they're very much relying on avoidance, and then hopefully infantry don't get charged.
Yeah. What would be a cool army rule for a Savage Orc / Forest Goblin army to make them viable, if that's what we get?
I didn't realise these were the same. Are they same? Would they be the same book?
Apparently, there's rumours that is the case. So some rumours you see have more validity than others, and I don't know that these have any validity, I will say.
Yeah. And the forest goblins are the ones that take the spiders, is that correct?
Correct, yeah. So that it's like goblins, not night goblins. So
right.
What would
well, I think we need Amy to come in here and tell us what her Arachnok spider needs.
I can tell you what it needs. After speaking at length to her on Saturday, she'd quite like to be able to take it without the howder on top, because the weapon skill 2 goblins make it really easy for that spider to be killed, because any incoming attacks.
Yeah,
my suggestion was being able to put a goblin boss on top, not a wizard, just a normal fighty character. They're a lot cheaper, and they have better weapon skill, so it overcomes that issue, and you can then still put layered saves on them. So something like that. Also, maybe make the silk launcher not terrible.
Yeah, definitely.
What would a cool army rule be, though?
Yeah, cool. For the Savage Orcs, you could have a cool thing around. They have like a sort of berserker sort of mode that's potentially slightly more controllable than Frenzy. I.e., you can choose at which point it goes on. That might be interesting to sort of
something like the WAR rule that we see from orcs across multiple versions of multiple Warhammer games,
a good shout, isn't it?
Where you call it in your command phase and you get potentially increased range, increased strength, AP, like some sort of just like, oh, it's the go turn, and then the next turn after that, here is like a residual turn of like, so first turn you get extra range, strength, AP, and then the next turn you only get like the extra strength or something. It's like, oh, we're still pretty hyped, but we're less hyped.
Yeah, definitely.
In terms of making them viable, new rules. Fanatics in the regular goblins. Full plate and mob rule for the Savage Orcs. Oh wait, I've just described Night Goblins and Black Orcs. It's a difficult one to give you an actual serious answer for that.
Yeah, because you don't want the Savage Orcs to be like you want their kind of the war painty stuff to give them a ward save, don't you? So they are slightly less easy to kill than normal orcs. Maybe an extra wound, something like that. Make them tougher.
Frenzied orc boys war paint already, so you don't see it because it's not good. So maybe something else. Any particular hopes for units to come back / being included in the Border Princes list? People have been talking for ages about pikes. I want to see what they do with pikes. I think that'd be cool.
Yeah, that would be really cool. I agree with that.
Yeah. Also, I'd like to see a Border Prince list or Dogs of War list not suffer from mercenary issues. Like, that would be cool. That's my expectation, is that everything's just mercenaries, which means that you've got to roll loads of mercenary tests. Like, which, aside from the admin of doing it, also just like, I don't want my army to have downsides. No, thank you. Just let me pay them well.
You want it to at least walk forwards when you tell it to walk forwards, really.
I want my units to do what they should do on the tabletop. Any rule that's meant to be like, oh, but they're so uncontrollable, typically just makes them bad and not fun.
Yeah, because it'll just go wrong at the precise moment that you don't want it to go wrong. I agree with that. That's pretty cool.
Ed says, how many balloons is the correct number to run in a Saffron Slam? I'd say probably 1. But also, if people are going to win, they're going to win.
Yeah, you turn 2 was sufficient. The guy that had 3, won 2, lost 2, and drew 1. So, based on that, they're absolutely fine. I mean, they're quite oppressive.
Yeah.
And I'm being nice. Been thinking about it a little bit. It's the lack of interactivity.
Oh yeah.
That's the issue. They're strong. Don't get me wrong. They are very, very strong. But I think people could kind of deal with them being strong if they had a realistic way of kind of getting at them. But they do just have so many rules to just avoid you completely. I know they're kind of floating around and they're supposed to be a bit higher up and stuff like that, so that's kind of fine from a thematic perspective. But I don't think you can have both. I don't think being completely uninteractive and also dishing out heinous amounts of damage at the same time doesn't create a good combination for a unit to be fun to play against. Whatever you say about dragons, I think, okay, for the first few months, people didn't really know how to deal with them, and it was frustrating. But eventually, people worked out how to deal with them, and broadly, community can take the piss out of dragons. There's a whole WhatsApp group where it's just photos of people swearing at dragons.
Yeah.
But you kind of worked out roughly how to handle them to a point where taking some dragons, some of the weaker dragons, like the vampire one, it was an active detriment to your army to have it because people just knew how to deal with it, and it wasn't good enough to overpower stuff.
The actual issue comparing dragons to balloons is dragons, yes, are very good, but they have a 90-degree charge arc. You can play around it. A balloon is a shooting unit that has a move, a reserve move, 2 lumbering pivots, and 360 line of sight. Like, if people are drawing an equivalency between them, I think that's disingenuous, genuinely.
Yeah. And the dragons cost 500-600 points.
Yeah. You can run. You could run 3, and I don't think that was a good list. You're realistically running 2. And yes, that was like the best way to run Dark Elves, but the rest of the stuff there wasn't great. If I run 2 balloons loaded up with characters, I've still got 1,500 points, of which 1,000 points of it can be balloons. That's so many balloons.
I think there's an event coming up this weekend where someone's got 7.
I've said, if we can crowdsource, and I don't mean people buying me balloons, just like lending me painted balloons for a Warhammer World Tournament, I'll go there. I will make sure they see firsthand the desolation. I'll bring a speaker and play Fortunate Son. I
all day.
That's just what's needed. Or like no, because they just asked me to turn that off. I'll wire it into. I'll make one of my own balloons and I'll put little speakers inside there. And because it's such a cool hobbying project, they won't ask me to turn it off. So I'll just be there playing Fortunate Son, driving myself nuts, being the villain. Very. I'm not going to compare myself to Batman. That's maybe one step too far on the ego ladder.
I'm Batman.
Yeah, not the hero the old world deserves. Happy birthday, Amy! I did see in chat there that you're here and you're having birthday drinks. So happy birthday, congratulations! We were talking about
happy
you
birthday
earlier.
to you as well, Ed.
Yes, yeah, mine was on Sunday, so now 32, which is just like a blip.
Welcome to the old world, mate.
I turned 32 years ago. 32's whatever. But yes, we did get... I got completely sidetracked there. What am I trying to do? Yes, how many Shigangan Generals is too many? 4. I think I'm on the fence, but I think we talked about this previously, whether units, it should be unit cards or the unit themselves. So should the entirety of the Shigangan Lord / General be rule of 3, or should you be able to take 3 of both? I think I lean towards capping it at 3 for the data card in general, because if you're taking more than 3 of something in a rule of 3,
probably good. Yeah,
it's probably some heinous spam bullshit. Speaking as someone who loves heinous spam bullshit, so limit me. Stop
people
me
crying
from
in
myself.
Beastmen casters and crying in necromancers there.
Both of which, if you take more than 3, you're doing some bullshit.
Yeah.
Like, let's be frank. And I've played both lists. I played as both lists. Viletide spam and also necromancers. To be fair, I don't think the necromancer spam is particularly like the best way to play. But
no, you're just rezzing a lot of zombies, which is weird, but fine.
Ed says, Lewis, please elaborate on this wildly head rumor, and it's click to an attachment. I'm not going to read the attachment, but we have elaborated on this rumor already. I think Ed was the one who cropped it as well initially, so he's really doubling down. Good man.
Although everyone on your Discord or our Discord is changing their names to more something tiers, or more something terrain. And it makes it incredibly difficult to work out who the hell is who.
So initially, Callum was more Dark Elf. Was it more Dark Elf content? Then has changed his name over the months to keep up with, so it became more Beastman Rumours, and then more... I'm not sure. Ed's joined on. There were a few people joined on, and I made a linked at all of them in the VIP section. I was like, oh god, you guys, ugh. And then someone else joined in. I was like, oh, it's just too easy. You dance to my puppet strings of having amusing names. Ha 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 ha, I'm a mastermind. I think this was when I was stuck on a train coming home. Alright. Goldfire says, how big does a pair of feet have to be for Lewis to consider them big? And this is not a fetish thing. This is just a curious question about feet.
So when I used to work in tailoring, you used to get people coming with size 14 feet.
Wow.
You'd have to order shoes in from miles away. You'd never be able to get shoes big enough for them. Even size 12 was a challenge at some point. So I think that's pretty big. Get size 12 upwards. You're pretty chunky feet at that point.
I knew a guy who had massive feet when I was in primary school is when I knew him. So he was already pushing the bounds of what you could get by the time we hit year 6. His dad worked for Clark's, and I think it was partially because he also had big feet, and maybe you got really easy access to big shoes or something.
On your massive shoes.
I was 10, so I didn't do investigative journalism into this. However, the story that my truth is that he has that job or had that job to make it easier to get shoes for his big feet. And that's what makes big feet when you work for Clark's, because it makes it easier for you to get shoes.
You could just go into Clark's and ask them, but
yeah. Steve asks about rule of 3 for data sheets. And we've briefly talked about this, but he just says, who do you think would care and why does nobody care about them? It's Beastmen, it's potentially Bretonnians, because they've got all of their characters in one, so you couldn't go 2 Barons and 2 Paladins, for example, which you're not really doing, but theoretically
Bretonnians. They've got all 3 on one, haven't they?
It would be also potentially Cathay. So these are all armies that people would not cry for, basically, is the answer you're getting from that. I don't think there's really anything else that I'm like, oh, I want to spam loads of these characters. Can you think of anything that's super spammable?
I think the reason it's something that no one's discussed up until this point is that up until this point it hasn't really been an issue. There's been, as you say, a couple of niche lists where people have been spamming some more, but they've never been tearing up the meta completely, have they? Like lots of Vartides. It's annoying, but it's not event winning. It's not soul destroying in the way that potentially having all those Shugangans might be.
Tomb King Priest from Mortuary Cult. Good shout, Goldfire.
Oh yeah, that's a good shout. Yeah.
Fuck Mortuary Cult. All my homies hate Mortuary Cult.
But then with 3 of them, even if you were limited to 3, then they're probably still quite good, aren't they?
Yeah, I think 3 might actually be the number that you want to stop at anyway. But you know, that said, it's still. Were there any spiders in last weekend's events? Yes, there was. There was an Orcs and Goblin player who won 0 games who took spiders.
Yep, I think just the one. Although we
not
definitely had a
making that
spider
up.
in the Canterbury game that I played against him. I'm
Sure.
not entirely sure if he did have a spider this time. I think he did. I think it was the same list.
Yeah. Callum points out he doesn't think it's fair about the limiting to unit sheet instead of model, because it's more done by model range, not balance. And I think that's a fair point. But also I think the armies that are affected currently, I'm okay with them being limited. So first they came for the Beastmen, and I did not cry out because I was sick of being file-tided 5 times a turn. And then they came for, I don't know what I'm playing. Anyway, what if Beats had Ungol casters? That'd be cool. Let's move on. We're going to skip the second Steve question just for your benefit. Golfire says, with SB giving us full armies, Pash giving us the best play to play the game, and Owl introducing new units from Age of Sigmar, do we even need Games Workshop anymore? I will not be playing with new units introduced as homebrew. So, yes, I would say. I'm not sure what Pash has been doing. I think Pash might be putting up bait shorts to make it seem like Scotland won home nations, even though they didn't, by drinking out of a big cup and saying, like, you know, victory tastes sweet or something when he came second. Love you, Pash. You baited motherfucker. Steve says, with Arsenal signing this summer, do you think this is the year they can win the Premier League? Now they have
finally signed a striker.
They have finally signed a striker.
But I'm not entirely sure why Steve's talking about men's football when it's coming home, Ed. It's come home already.
Did they win? I meant to watch it and I forgot.
We'll call smash and grab is how we describe that.
Nice. Hell yeah. Well, not that any
they did us proud.
Not that any of the women's England football team watch this, but congratulations. No. It's good to have some actual football success for us internationally. Super jazz for that. You know, well done. I watched about 2/3 of a game when I was on my brother's stag do. We were in one of those classic. It's a big hall with loads of food venues around, but like communal seating. I love those places. There's so much variety. Anyway, they had big TVs up. And it was, I think, the first or second game that the Lionesses had played at the Euros, and they were getting fucking bodied. And I was happy to watch the whole thing, because once I start watching something, I want to finish it, even if they were losing. But yeah, the rest of the boys were like, this is tragic, let's go and get drunk, which I respect. Yes. You know,
it was a poor start, and it never really got better, yet somehow we won. But there we are.
Now that I can get behind that, I do love a good underdog story, even if the underdog is maybe undeserved. But I will not speak on that because I am not an expert on women's football or men's football, really.
No. But finding out, she announced it at the end. So Lucy Bronze, one of our defenders, she was playing the whole tournament with a fractured tibia.
Wow.
I'm just like, how does she even stand up?
That's pretty
How does
impressive.
she kick a ball? How does she get tackled? How does she tackle people with a fractured tibia?
Yeah.
I think that's particularly impressive. And our goalkeeper, Hannah Hampton, had a eye condition where she doesn't have very good depth perception. She's our goalkeeper. So how good a goalkeeper you have to be able to get over that condition to become arguably one of the best goalkeepers in the world. That's pretty amazing. So it was
impressive.
a team pretty full of, I don't know, pretty full of guts in a way that I think you do need if you're going to go and win one of these events. I think you've just got to have that kind of ability to never give up, and take a punch and roll with it and just still get up and keep going. And I think that's
Nice.
That's me on women's football. We did amazing. Very proud.
Hell yeah. Of course, what I do have to say about Arsenal is, did you see that ludicrous display last night? What was Wenger thinking, sending Walcott on that early?
Just trying to walk it in.
Yeah, it's the problem with Arsenal. They always try and walk it in. Excellent stuff. So you got some actual football, and then you got some IT crowd as well. Aren't you all lucky? What's your favourite watercourse and why? This is obviously a question more for you, Mr. Riverboy.
Yes, there's a few river questions coming up here. So obviously everyone knows I work for the Environment Agency, but
It's his fault we have global warming.
I'm trying to do something about it, Ed. Trying to make it less of a disaster. I would probably pick one of my rivers in North London. Love the Brent. The Brent, it's got a lot of issues, but it's definitely one of my favourites. The Lee, very historic. The Crane is like the golden boy of London, in that it's going to be, well, it is amazing, and it's coming back to life, and it's actually quite a natural river. So any of those three.
Sorry, I was dozing off there as you.
We haven't talked about Warhammer for at least 15 minutes.
That's fine. It was when you started talking about waterways. My mum's a huge fan of canals, so when I came down to the East Midlands, I was subjected by lots of excitement for them, which is fine.
Canals are a bit less interesting because they don't really move as much. Rivers are a bit more exciting.
Excellent.
There's top tip for you there.
I'm a big fan of the Weir. We'll go with that. From my end, back in day. All right. Oh, God. Steve, if the River Severn and the River Clyde had a fight, who would win?
Well, I think it's the River Severn because you've got the big tidal bore on the River Severn. And I don't know if the Clyde has one.
You're a big tidal bore. Anyway, yeah, no, that's really interesting. Thank you for enlightening us with your personal work experience. I really appreciate it. Oh God, what's your favorite riparian flora?
These people pay you, Ed, so you have to answer their questions.
See, here's the thing: I absolutely don't, but I am going to as well because it is funny.
My favourite riparian fauna it's a classic. Is the purple loosestrife? Can't go wrong with that. That's a classic riparian plant.
Yeah, mine would be Japanese hogweed because you can't fucking get rid of it.
Japanese knotweed, I'm afraid. Giant hogweed's the other one. So get your facts right, Ed. Come on, if you're going to talk about invasive species, at least do it right.
I don't work for the Rivers Company. I did actually used to very briefly work for the Canal and River Trust, which was standing on the side of the canal for 5 hours a day in the summer going, hello, would you like to make a recurring donation to the Canal River Trust? I didn't get a lot of donations, and they paid really well. Back when minimum wage was like $7.50 or something, I was getting, I think it was 10 quid an hour, 12 quid an hour. They did not get their money's worth out of me, which I apologise for, given that I was working for a charity. But they are one of the only 2 charities in the country, at that time, I don't know if it's still the same, who do not use the donations of the people who sign up to pay their staff. Because they own a lot of property, and they use the wages from leasing out the property to pay staff, and then the donations 100% go into paying for all of the work and upkeep and similar. The other one is St. John's Ambulance. They're the two that, if you want your donation to go fully to the cause, those are the two that were doing it, at least 10 years ago. I don't know if it's changed at all. All right.
No idea. Good fact.
And then finally, no, sorry, there's 2. Callum says, now we know about strength of schedule. Can we all learn the strength of friendship? I don't know. I don't like any of you. You're all terrible. Yeah.
You know who these people are with their silly Discord names, and I have no idea who any of these people actually are. So I can't place. Like Ginger Steve, I get that one. That's pretty clear. Rest, it's just random people, and I'm sure they're people I
It's
should
all
know.
the usual suspects. Like,
usual
don't you
suspects,
worry.
yeah.
There's no new faces in there asking us these questions. They've just disguised themselves to mess with you, which I appreciate and approve of. Finally, we've got Vesper. Question at me. I'm dedicating each podcast day a question about Dark Elves. That's fair. I like that. Why are the cream of Dark Elf society, nobles and Cold One Knights, subjected to the stupidity rule? That's demeaning and probably racist. Thanks. Now, I think I appreciate the question. If we look at what's actually stupid here, it's not the elves. Although it might be because they've chosen to ride something that's incredibly stupid. Now, what they've done is they've nicked something from another place, and the thing that they've nicked is a little bit defective, which is obviously the Cold Ones that they're riding. If you look at Lizardmen, their Cold One riders are stupid as well. Now, Dark Elves have made them better, because you can wear full plate and sit on top of them, and you also have a banner that makes their attacks better. So, I actually think Cold Ones might still be the way to go, which is a little frustrating, because stupidity sucks. But it's not the elves that are stupid. It is the Cold One riders, so... No racism here, just elfism, where high elves get everything and wood elves and dark elves get significantly less and feel bad for it. Then we also said, also, how do you do, sir, at Lewis? But because I'm inspired, what's your favourite foreign river, and why is it Tigris? I'm biased.
Favourite foreign river? That's a good question. Obviously, you've got the what is it? The Tigris and the Euphrates, which are like the cradle of human civilization. So they're always a good shout. I like the Rubicon in Italy. That's a particularly nice bit of the world.
Yeah.
And you can't go wrong with like the Columbia River or anything like that as well. My brother lives on the Columbia River, flows all the way from like middle of Canada all the way down to the west coast of the United States. Massive beast. So yeah, I don't have a favourite. I should investigate that and get a favourite.
That's yeah. Oh. Anyway, so then we've got another question from Callum. Can I just keep posting here